So as you guys can see, just with Eric's one config file here, you can get as basic or as extreme and complex as you want with the RacePak Drag SmartWire, Street SmartWire, or even just the basic SmartWire. We have a couple different options that allow you to point and choose as far as a harness. A lot of people at the very beginning when we came out to SmartWire, they got a little intimidated when it came to, oh man, I have this connector and I have to wire in all this stuff still, and I'm not really sure how to do that. Well, now what RacePak has done is we've come out with a drag specific harness and a street specific harness that actually comes put together for you already in the connectors, that is with labeled wires that say turn signal, ignition, fuel pump, all the basic functions to actually get your car running and going down the track. So once you have that done, all you have to do is, if you want to use any logic for that, like your shifter you were talking about, it's already done. You just have to tell it what to do. So let's talk a little bit about actually setting up one of the channels after we have something in there.
So what we'll do here is we'll first open up a config file, which is kind of like the configuration setup file for that device. In my case, I have quite a few channels on here. Majority of this stuff, I've got O2s, MSD, Holley information, as well as all the SmartWire information. We have a channel box basically for each output on the SmartWire. We'll right click on the one that basically we were talking about in regards to the shift solenoid, which if I can find it obviously in this large amount of items here. Shift solenoid is this one channel here. We'll right click on this. This one opens up the first main window for that output channel. Basic information like name, fuse current limit, function, any delays, anything like that. You can modify this window to control that one output. More importantly though is this on condition button. We click on this and this is kind of where the magic happens for that output. This allows us to go through and select whatever channels that we want on the RacePak system, select conditions for that channel to become true or false, and then we tie it over here on the right hand side in the logic area. Normally when you first open this window is blank, but this is where you tie channels together. For instance, I'm looking at engine RPM for the shift solenoid. Looking at engine RPM, when it goes above 7,000 RPM, that logic for that particular condition becomes true. If I just had that as the logic window, it would go on anytime it was above 7,000 RPM. I do have another thing I look at. I have a switch that I use for like a race condition. It's kind of like when I'm on the track after I've done my burnouts and before I stage, I flip a race switch. Just kind of indicating to the system that that's what we're getting ready to do, is we're on a race pass, so everything should be in race mode for the most part. I look at those two things, the engine RPM when it goes above 7,000 and that race switch has to be on. Those two conditions, when they're met, the output for the shift solenoid would activate. So obviously the race switch would be on as I'm staging or anytime down the track. Then it's just waiting for the engine RPM to come above 7,000. As soon as it does, it triggers that output and shifts the car, and when it falls back below 6,500, this condition would become false, and therefore the shift solenoid would cease to operate until it's further designed to, I guess, by logic or whatever conditions that you want for the most part. I'm kind of redundant. I look at a few things. I look at engine RPM coming into the RacePak. I also look at engine RPM on the MSD, and you can see here I've set a condition up so that if the engine RPM on the RacePak is above 7 and the race switch is on, it would activate that output, or by designating the next condition below the or sign, if the MSD RPM is above 7,000 and that race switch is on. So that way, just in case a tack wire or something like that comes loose, you know, they're race cars, they vibrate, things happen. If I lose the tack signal on one, I still have that tack signal coming into the grid through the network, and that operates the shifter as well.
So in other words, that what you're programming here is going to show over here, basically, with the ands and the ors.
Exactly.
So this and this needs to happen, or this and this needs to happen to equal something.
Exactly. If those things happen, that logic becomes true, and therefore that output becomes true or turns on. So
okay.
Same condition as you mentioned, if it's below the or sign, either one of these becomes true, then that output's going to trigger on. So once again, as I mentioned, I'm kind of redundant. I want to make sure that thing shifts when it's supposed to shift. If two conditions are on at the same time, it's not a problem. That output will just be on until both those, or either one of those, both of those outputs logics go off.
Yeah. So as you can see, guys, when I say you can get as basic or as extreme as you basically would like, here's a prime example of it. I mean, you can, the things that you can do with the SmartWire going down the track in just an 8-second pass is pretty phenomenal. So